Hi, I'm Lindsay Bugby from The Postman's Knock, and I've been teaching pointed pen calligraphy online since 2014 and in person since 2015. Of course, in that time, I have had plenty of opportunities to observe common beginner mistakes, so today we are going to go over the top 8 errors that pointed pen calligraphy beginners typically make. The number one pointed pen calligraphy beginner error is starting off with the wrong supplies. And the unfortunate thing about that is it's almost always not the beginner's fault that they've started off with the wrong supplies. Usually you've purchased some sort of kit and the trust is implicit that the seller of the kit has given you something that will help you to succeed, because you would think that they know more about calligraphy than you do because they compiled this kit. The sad reality is that sellers know that pointed pen calligraphy is picking up in popularity, and without understanding exactly how pointed pen calligraphy works, they put all of these supplies together and the supplies simply don't work for pointed pen calligraphy. So let me show you an example. I happened to come across a kit on Amazon, and this particular calligraphy kit was using TPK worksheet materials in it, which obviously legally not cool. So that kit is no longer available, but I've got the supplies from the kit here. So this was a kit that was being sold on Amazon. And more than the fact that my materials were being used in the kit, my learning materials, I was horrified at the fact that they had put my materials together with such awful supplies. So this is pointed pen instruction, and these nibs are not pointed pen calligraphy nibs. So I feel so awful for the hundreds of people that purchased this kit before I caught that it was on Amazon, because there's just no way to succeed here. Let me show you. So let's pick out the smallest calligraphy nib in the kit. This is the nib that has the sharpest tip. All right, we'll put this in the oblique pen. And now let's make some downstrokes. I suspect that we will have some success in the downstroke area because the tip of the nib is somewhat broad. All right, so that looks okay. And then when we go for upstroke, so we're trying to make a nice thin upstroke, there's no way to do it because this is not a pointed pen nib. This is for broad tip calligraphy. So whoever put this kit together didn't understand the difference between pointed pen nibs and broad tip nibs. Now let's try to write a letter and see how it goes. I suspect not so well. So you can see my examples have thin upstrokes and thick downstrokes. And this is literally the creator of the worksheet trying to make a letter that looks like the letter demoed here. How terrible is that? There's no stroke variation. The ink is sinking right into the paper, and it's all because whoever compiled this beginner calligraphy kit didn't understand the differences between types of nibs. They didn't understand that you have to use high quality ink and high quality paper, and they didn't understand the differences between different types of calligraphy. So if you want to start off with a beginner kit, it's a great idea to do so, but make sure that you are purchasing a reputable kit that will set you up for success. TPK has a great calligraphy kit. I also have a list of a DIY calligraphy kit that you can compile yourself, and I will put links to both of those in the video description. Speaking of supplies, let's talk paper. So many people assume that you can create pointed pen calligraphy on any type of paper, and that's simply not the case. Unfortunately, pointed pen calligraphy ink can be more liquid than the ink in your typical gel pen, your typical ballpoint pen, so you have to be a bit picky about the paper that you use. You can see that this paper soaks up ink hungrily because the fibers are not tightly woven, the paper isn't super smooth, it's just not a great paper for pointed pen calligraphy. So especially if you're a beginner, it's really important to start off with a smooth, high quality paper. I like 32 pound HP Premium LaserJet. I think that that's actually the most economical practice choice, really nice to print off worksheets on as well. But if you can start off with Rodea, Tomo River, Clairefontaine, those are all really great brands too. Another very common pointed pen calligraphy beginner mistake is not holding your pen properly. So there's not one right way to do it. Some calligraphy experts might disagree with me on that one, but I think that some people need to develop their own grip that works for them as long as you are able to exert balanced pressure on both tines of the nib. So typically that means holding the pen at a 45-degree angle to the paper and then pushing the pen up and down in order to exert balanced, even pressure on both of those tines. But the instinct is, if you've never done pointed pen calligraphy before, to hold the pen quite upright and then try to write with this upright angle. And you can see when I do this, I am getting some degree of success, but it is really difficult for me to achieve nice stroke contrast. So if this is where you're at, try to lever your pen down and just imagine that you're trying to balance something on the top. And so the pen itself doesn't actually move. It glides across the page, and what's doing all of the work is, to a certain degree, your fingers, but also your wrist and your forearm and a bit of your elbow. So you are just pushing and pulling the pen as opposed to levering the pen. So the pen should never be wiggling. You're always pushing and pulling and keeping the pen static. So not this, this. Another super common error that calligraphy beginners make is getting moisture up in their pens, whether that's ink or water. So when you dip your pointed pen in ink, you do not want to go up past the hole in the center of the nib, the reservoir. And up to that point, you can dip however far you want. You can dip just the tip, you can dip halfway up, or you can dip all the way to that reservoir. But don't get any further than that because you do not want ink going up in your pen. As you're writing, you'll notice that your nib gets a bit gunky and you'll want to swish it off in water. When you swish, also make sure that that water does not get up in the pen. So why do we want to be careful about that? We want to be careful about that because if we get ink and or water up here in the pen, eventually that's a death sentence for both the nib and the pen. Why? Because nibs only have a lifespan of a few months, so they're not going to last forever. Getting water or ink up in here means that the nib, one way or another, is going to get glued. It will either get glued with rust because of water, or it will get glued because of a combination of dried ink getting gunky and rust. And then you're not going to be able to remove the nib from the pen, which means you won't be able to replace the nib with another nib once this nib is done. So just make sure that when you dip in ink, when you dip in water, you don't get any moisture up here in the pen. All of the moisture is interacting only with the nib. The next pointed pen calligraphy beginner mistake is not practicing in a way that works for you. Think of pointed pen calligraphy as a mental health exercise because that is why a lot of people do it, the vast majority, in fact. It's a really good way to just decompress and unplug and relax. Just like with a physical health exercise, there are a lot of ways to reach the end goal here, which is a proficiency at calligraphy. With physical health, you've got this whole myriad of things that people like to do. People do yoga, people do barre, people do spinning, people go running. Lots of things, right? So it stands to reason that with calligraphy, there's not just one way to reach that proficiency in pointed pen calligraphy. There are a lot of different ways to do it. So try everything. Try worksheets where you just write AAA, BBB over and over again. Try calligraphy drills. Try doing projects. Just see what stimulates you the most, what really resonates with you, what makes you think, okay, I want to keep doing this. Me personally, my jam as a beginner was making projects. Were those projects professional looking? Absolutely not. But I loved putting together cool looking envelopes. And in that way, I was able to get in quality calligraphy practice that got me to the level I am at today. On that note, TPK does have a smorgasbord of options when it comes to calligraphy practice. So I invite you to try my drills, try my worksheets, try my projects. A lot of them are free. Just take a look around and I suspect that you'll find something you gel with. The next pointed pen calligraphy beginner error is one that I don't want to discourage you with, but I also think it's realistic to know that you're not going to become an expert in calligraphy overnight. I think in today's world, we're really used to instant gratification, results that happen incredibly quickly. And with pointed pen calligraphy, that's just not going to be the case for 99% of people. Becoming good, proficient, making professional quality work, it takes a lot of time to develop. And I hesitate to say that because I feel like it's discouraging to tell somebody, hey, this is going to take time. But that's the truth. And more than that, I think it's important to focus on the journey aspect of calligraphy and how rewarding it is to work on your pointed pen skills to get to a level where you can make things that you're proud of. So when you're practicing, it's important not to focus so much on the results and what you're seeing on the page. Of course, you want to keep that in mind so you can improve. But the main thing is to set yourself up in an environment that helps you to relax and helps you to tap into your creativity and helps you to get in that mode of problem solving. Okay, this letter isn't looking how I thought it would look. How can I fix it so that the next time I write this letter, it's better? You have to embrace pointed pen calligraphy as a process rather than something that you're looking to achieve, if that makes sense. So don't expect to start calligraphy week 1 and then in week 3, you're ready to make beautiful wedding envelope addresses. That's probably not going to be the case. You're going to need to practice, and the amount of practice and the type of practice is going to depend on you. But don't expect super quick results or you're setting yourself up for failure. Another beginner calligraphy error is being afraid to tweak your supplies. Calligraphy is very much a hands-on activity in a number of ways, and you really have to be unafraid to play with things to get them to work for you. So a lot of times your inks won't cooperate. They might be a little too viscous because as we're writing, we don't even notice, but water very slowly evaporates out. You have to be unafraid to add water back into your ink and then just stir it up with a chopstick. It'll be nice and ready to go. It's a similar case with brass flanged oblique pens. If you can't get a nib to stick inside of there, then you can use your fingers to loosen up that brass flange to encourage the nib to go further in. Similarly, if a flange is too loose, you can just take some needle nose pliers and squeeze right here to tighten that flange opening up. The last beginner calligraphy error that we're going to discuss is writing too quickly. Many people feel like you need to write at the everyday writing pace. But see how that's working out for me? Not so well. What you need to do is write at a slow and deliberate pace. All right? So instead of writing at an everyday pace, you take it nice and slow. Exert pressure on those downstrokes, let up on the upstrokes. Exert on the downstrokes, let up on the upstrokes. This is supposed to be a slow and relaxing activity. It is not a race. And really, the faster you go, especially as a beginner, the less favorable your results are going to be. So just try to make sure that you are coming to your practice with this mentality of, all right, I'm letting the day go. I'm going to go nice and slow, and I am going to enjoy myself. I'm not going to force myself to write quickly, because in writing quickly, I lose the ability to create nice, effective letter forms. And equally importantly, I lose the ability to control my stroke widths. All right, that's it. I hope that this video helps you to start off your pointed pen calligraphy endeavors on the right foot. If you have any questions, of course, don't hesitate to ask. I'm always happy to answer. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.